Good morning, everybody. How did everyone sleep? You don't have to answer that. Welcome. So as you heard me say out there, we have a tight schedule today. And so we're going to get started here in just a couple minutes. And Mason Feary is up next. This is his first time joining us. He's been a vendor or an affiliate of ours, Merlins Lab, Silver and Orgone Pyramids. I'm sure you've seen his vendor station out there. He has some amazing products, but he is former Army and intelligence analyst. Did I get that right? Okay. But he has an incredible story, and he's a brilliant mind, and his presentation is called What is Light? And he has some very fascinating information that he's going to be sharing with us. So without wasting any more time, welcome to the stage, Mason.
Alrighty, good morning. So today's topic is kind of like a combination of things that I've experienced within the analytical world, in spectrum analysis, the esoteric world, and then also in earlier healing periods with a couple people. So the universe is a symphony of vibrating strings. We are nothing but melodies, and through the vibration of these strings, we are interconnected with everything in the universe. That is a quote by Tesla. So a little bit about me. I worked in geospatial intelligence for 8 years. I was Army and then also civilian for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. What we do there is we take a collection of photos. I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of a small screen. But spectral analysis means using the full 7-band spectrum and then other bands, like there's radio waves and sonar and all sorts of stuff. But in a nutshell, we can take the 7 bands of light and turn on and off those bands of light to discover different things in imagery. And it's used for layering and composites. It's used for identifying IEDs, sniper locations, hidden bunker locations, all sorts of stuff. So this type of technology really gave me an understanding of how to layer and compile things, but then also contrast and create an idea or kind of like a scope of what a mission is for the military. I was 25 years old and I was already teaching at a university at the NGA. And I did very well. Unfortunately, I didn't have a degree, so I was teaching people with master's degrees and PhDs, and they didn't like me too much. So they're like, what are you going to know? I was like, well, I'm teaching you. You're in my class, so sit down. No, I'm just kidding. But so I loved it. I loved everything about it. I went to school at the NGA, and I ended up teaching there. But then I realized that there's a whole different spectrum to the intelligence agencies than I think most people are aware of. And you have a question? Probably not. I could make a PDF, yes. There's a lot of information on here. But a lot of it's not going to be on the screen. A lot of it is what I'm saying. LiDAR, yeah, that's light detection and ranging. So that's using a signal to tell different elevation data. And LiDAR can actually penetrate soil. So you can actually see things through like a foliage or like in the Amazon, they're discovering ancient ruins and stuff like that. We use LiDAR for very different reasons. But yeah, it's a great thing. And you know, it's funny is that LiDAR sensor that I used to use was like millions of dollars and it's way up in the sky. And now I have one on my iPhone. So they pay us a lot to do nothing in the government. But yeah, so as I was saying, so a lot of these intelligence agencies are ran by secret fraternities. And not in the way of like it's politically motivated by these fraternities, but that all these people that are in the politicians or, you know, the government or the department of whatever's, they all kind of belong to some sort of secret society. And this one in particular is Skull and Bones. So the motto of Skull and Bones is, as I think, so I act. So that means I'm void of emotion. How it's supposed to be is I think, am I polarized, masculine, feminine, so I feel, my limbic system, so I act. The R complex, or the reptilian complex of the mind. These guys think and act. They don't care, Skull and Bones. They're the ones kind of mainly in charge of like our intelligence agencies, while the Freemasons are, their dominions really like the court systems, So they have like an allegiance to one another that basically says that if I am a Mason, which I am, but not a Mason, but my name's Mason, that if I hurt someone and my fellow Mason sees me, he can't tell against me. And in fact, he has to support my character. So how does that work in a society if you do unjust things, but a brother cannot tell on another brother? All of them, yeah. Yeah, it's Harvard. Harvard, Stanford, all those big universities, they created these. And that's why they have fraternities. Fraternities are full with all these symbols, beta, alpha, all that kind. These are all alchemical symbols, and it kind of gets people enticed into these, environments because, well, there's symbology. Half of my brain is full of archetypes and understanding symbology, so it's alluring. But then they have promises of advancement. When I was in the intelligence agency, they promised like positions of power, and money, and that's a real thing. Until I said something inappropriate that I will not speak on camera. But if you want to get to me in private, I basically said, no, thank you. And I got fired the next day. But despite that, there's a big group of these people that they run the show. And if you speak out against them, they will ruin you. I was not allowed to go back into my industry after having over a decade of experience. And, some of it was personal choices. Some of it was, I was kind of in an adjustment period. I was going through a Saturn's return at that time. If anyone knows what that means, it means my entire life got derailed. But I'm here now, so it looks like we got back on track. So I'm going to go briefly over some authors and some resources for all of you to look through about what this topic is, because it's very important. Mainstream will tell you, get the new iPhone, get the new computer, get Wi-Fi 6. And I'm here to tell you, please do not. So Arthur Furstenberg, he's the first author. He talks about a book called The Invisible Rainbow. And The Invisible Rainbow is very fascinating because it talks about what we're talking about today, the colors of the spectrum. And in fact, the invisible portions of the spectrum that our technology actually deals with. So we have something called a negative and positive balance within our body. And what that is a negative ion is what nature produces. It's a negatively charged ion. It's a particle. And our electronic devices produce something called a positive ion. These ions attach to our body because we're full of metals and toxins. The whole body is a light being. So every cell in your body is actually filled with copper. So who's to say that if you have copper filled with toxins, viruses, and gunk, why can't you charge those particles and cause disease? So the less amount of flow in the body you have stagnant energy. And that's where practices like acupuncture or any medicine or body manipulation can break up those particles and release those ions. But then it's your job to actually take your mind and connect to what you're releasing. Because emotions actually cause stagnant energy. And once you release that stagnant energy, a thought will usually come up if you're aware of it. Take that thought and work through it. So some examples of what positive ions and negative ions do. I know that's kind of small. I was thinking of a huge projector in my mind. But this one's great. So the harmful influence of positive ions. So if you're sitting at a desk all day and you're on your computer, you're going to accumulate positive ions. This computer right now, I'm accumulating positive ions. But there's ways to get around it and mitigate your exposure. You can get increased agitation. You can have trouble sleeping. You'll have melatonin disruption. You can have melanin disruption, which is this pigmentation of our skin, and various other things. They say, technology's not bad because it's non-ionizing radiation. Non-ionizing radiation is the type that you get from our devices, while ionized radiation is from gamma rays, nuclear things like that. So they say, it's fine, but it's not. It actually causes tissue heating. So if your tissues are constantly exposed to this frequency, it'll cause heat and it'll start to disrupt those cells. And you'll start getting weird tumors, all sorts of stuff can happen with this things. And this guy, Dr. Jack Kruse, kind of controversial, kind of an asshole, but he's a brilliant neuroscientist. He's got over 10,000 surgeries in the field of neuroscience. And he talks about circadian rhythm being tied to the sun. And everything in esoteric science talks about the relationship between the sun and the moon and how important those two are. See? Yeah. Yeah, don't deny that. But what he talks about that's very interesting, this is called photobiomodulation. Photo mean light. Biomodulation means body manipulation. So melanin goes throughout the body, but melatonin is produced not only in your your pineal gland, which is what we all think, that's what makes you sleep, but it's actually created in your eye. So as soon as you actually take the morning sunrise, for example, that sets your body's tone to produce melatonin. It actually lowers your cortisol, it increases your cortisol to get you through the day, and then towards midday when you have that green spectrum, you get revitalized, and towards nighttime is when that melatonin production increases. But it only does it if your eyes are getting the information from the sun. It is literally your biological clock. Now here's the kicker. Sunset, I want to doom scroll. Got TikTok. You're getting 57 Kelvin, that's the temperature of light, from your phone, which is telling your body it's 7 in the morning. So chemically, your body's already off rhythm. That's why it's called a circadian rhythm. And blue light is just after sunset, or sunrise, just after sunset. So you're telling your body chemically it's the wrong time of day. And that's why a lot of us turn to night owls. It's not because you like to stay up and you are more productive. It's just because your body's chemicals are telling you something completely different. The other thing about that is, ever wondered, I'm not a fan of Vegas, but I do like the lights. Anybody else can say that the lights are pretty? They manipulate you. So those type of neon lights, those saturations, those hues create dopamine in the body, which is similar to drugs. Same thing with this. So they grab your attention, they peak it. It's almost like a hit of drugs. Your dopamine increases. You have the blue light that's suppressing your melatonin, which is your healing factor of your body, and you're hooked. And they know it because it's called Instagram. So we're going to get a little bit into science, and then I'm going to kind of go in a little bit different direction. So we have the 7 different visible rays. Right here we have 5. We have the red, the orange, the green, the blue, and the purple. So the red, everyone knows about red light therapy, I'm assuming. Yeah? Okay. So red light therapy has the deepest penetration because it's the longest wavelength. Longest wavelength means it's got the highest penetration, but it's only like half a centimeter. So that's good for like your skin, any like light tissues, any fatty tumors, anything like that. You can actually break that apart with red light in the infrared spectrum because infrared actually heats that tissue, but it doesn't damage it. Overexposure, like anything in indulgence, you can actually damage yourself, so just be careful. Orange will attack like the dermis. It penetrates a little bit, not as far as the red light, but that does an entirely different function based on its color and its resonance within certain systems of the body. Same thing with green, the blue, and then the ultraviolet. Funny thing about the colors in the later half of the spectrum, when we get into the cooler colors, those have to deal with repairing scars, calming, and more of a sedative effect. So there's a man by the name of Darius Dinshaw. I'm going to butcher that, but I'm not going to say it. And he created this thing in 1873. It's called the Spectro-Chrome device. He was born in India in 1873. At least by his own account, was a remarkable man. He began school at the ripe age of 2. Can't really say that's true or not, but I guess he's 2. And a half, and by 11, he was assistant professor of mathematics at the college in Bombay. Pretty impressive man. Every element exists one of the 7 prismatic colors: oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen, carbon. The elements that make up 97% of the body are associated with the colors of the spectrum: red, blue, orange, yellow, green, and so on. In health, these colors are balanced, but fall out of balance in disease. Therapy is a simple cure to administer lacking colors or reduce the colors that have become too brilliant. Side note, I am not a doctor. This is not medical advice. But this is something that he got banned for back in the day in the FDA. So Dinshaw had exactly the method to use. His Spectro-Chrome was a box with a light bulb, and the opening could be filled with various colored filters. It was accompanied by the Spectro-Chrome Therapeutic System Guide, which is this chart here, dealing with the appropriate colors to shine a patient. Green light, for example, is a pituitary stimulant, which is fascinating. Green light, if you were to think of a spectrum, like how you saw it on the previous scale, green's in the center, right? So green is on top, and its polar opposite is red. Red stimulates your adrenals. So that's interesting that color is associated in the body in that direction. But as any disease, save broken bones, it is the most responsive way to use, and that's color therapy. You remember back in the day when someone had a child, they either paint the room a light pink or a light blue? It's because it's a sedative color. it's a calming color. If it is an intense blue or an intense red, that is a stimulating color. That is a more active production. So you can tell just by the saturation in hue, mentally, what it does psychologically and physically. His slogan, no diagnosis, no drugs, no surgery. As with all inventions that seemed to piss off the FDA, Big Pharma, he was shut down and banned for production. Today his children created Dinshaw Health Society, which allows the prince to create these machines and materials to help practice. One thing I've noticed about banned technology is that these people release this information, how to build it yourself, and then they can still disperse it. That's kind of one of the ways is you don't ever want a patent because then somebody owns it and somebody could buy you out and then kick you away or kill you, one of the way. He developed the light as a form of tonation, tone, like musical tone. He was also an occultist. So take a look at that device there. That is the interwebbed Star of David. It's a very esoteric symbol. And there's some numbers there, and on the other side, there are some patterns. It's just sequencing for whatever colors you use. He was a Master Knights Templar and belonged to many other organizations like the Chief of Police in New York, among many other things. There's literally a list that big of all his credentials. It's actually impressive. And I do have a link to his biography if anyone's interested. But according to ancient Egyptian mythology, that is Thoth, by the way, the art of chromotherapy was discovered by the god Thoth. In Hermetic traditions, the ancient Egyptians and Greeks used colored metals, stones, crystals, salves, and dyes as remedies and painted treatment sanctuaries in various colors and shades. So you'll notice when you go to a hospital, everything is white. And then it makes you kind of like, oh shit. You know, it's kind of eerie, just the colors. But if it was colored, like something like yellow, oh, it'd be warming and inviting. If it was red, like dark red, you'd be like, oh shit, I'm gonna die. Whoopsie. Now you know what's coming up. Ah. Okay. In ancient Greece, physical nature was the color that was dominant. Why do you think nature is so healing? The color green, it means harmony. It is balance. It is the complete center of the light spectrum. And then you have those outliers of those beautiful flowers and all that, but that's just giving an accent color of the different healing frequencies of nature. So they were used to treat disease. The Greeks were unaware of the biological changes in the body as a result of color treatment. Nevertheless, they had blind faith in healing properties of colors. It's also interesting to know that they used both forms of treatment with colors and direct exposure to sunlight and indirect healing. The indirect method, they use the stones, dyes, and ointments, but the direct method is sunlight. Unfortunately, depending on where you live geographically, there's a different aperture of sun exposure, and that's called aperture of sun exposure. But what that means is the farther away from the equator you are, the less of those viable rays you get throughout the different seasons. So if you're like Washington State or here in Illinois, you only got about 3 months to utilize the sun in a healing spectrum to get those right amount of rays. But if you're somewhere closer to the equator, you literally get it all year round besides 2 months, which is like January and February. One second.
They use this in chakras?
We're going to get there. So, and here's another interesting thing. Everybody has a diet fad. Everybody eats what they want to eat. But I'll tell you right now, there is conclusive evidence that talks about you should only eat the foods in your geographic area. Whatever the sun is telling your food, it's also telling your body. So if you live in an equatorial area, vegetation, fruits grow there. If you're in Norway, why are you eating a pineapple in December? I'm going to let you know that the genetic information in that pineapple is different than the genetic information your body has been given the last couple months. That is a statement. Okay, so let's talk about what different spectrums of light do. So in the rev wave, we have the radio waves, which we're all familiar with. They're long waves that kind of look like a big wave of the ocean. Microwaves are tinier, but still within that red spectrum, and infrared. All of these are non-ionizing, but they do heat the tissue. Stick your hand in a microwave, see what happens. Drive next to a radio tower, you'll probably get a headache. And infrared, they're using that as healing, which isn't as bad because the sun gives you infrared pretty much all day. The visible light spectrum, that is our color hues. So what's interesting to note is the progression of colors throughout the years. Originally we used fire, which is a little bit more harmful than the sun's light. And then they moved to like lanterns, and then they moved to the incandescent bulb, which actually the incandescent bulb is the only light source today that gives you infrared rays, which is absolutely healthy for you. And especially if it's tinted in a red or an amber color, that is great for melatonin production. It doesn't shed anything down. So once we start getting into the higher spectrum of like LEDs and all these different various lights, they lose that red frequency, that infrared penetration, and they go into blue, which is actually toxic to cellular development and melatonin production and your DNA. So Dr. Jack Kruse is a really good resource to look into about how that science is. He's super tech savvy, but he does explain it to our average understanding of what this stuff means. And then to go further in the spectrum, as the colors show, we go into the purple. That's like the X-rays, gamma rays. X-rays, there was a lady that talked to me a couple months ago how she's like, her dentist gives her X-rays every month to see her cavities. And I was like, why would you do that? Why would you do that? You're irradiating the most precious part of your body. Your whole body can shut down, but it will not stop delivering blood to your brain, and she's just radiating the heck out of her mouth. So I gave her some supplements and some ideas, like vitamin K2 and brushing with eggshells to repair and remineralize the body. So it's funny to see, like, when you see these people getting these treatments that are using these different type of harmful frequencies, the sicker they get. And it's really no shock. You have metal in your body, and you're shining light that's radioactive. You're frying your cells. So now let's talk about the 7 colors. So light can ignite emotion. Light in various expressions can either excite or depress the emotional state. Take Facebook, for example. Blue invokes trust, right? Police officers. It's either the blue, the calming, or the red, oh shit. Because one or two going at the same time, you're in trouble. But also blue represents loyalty and trust. The royals would wear purple, which gives them a distinguished or divine appearance. Pastors don't really do that as much anymore. They kind of wear white because they want to have the whole purity look to them. But I'm not really going to go through these individual colors yet because we're there now. So we understand that the color red resonates with the root chakra. And it's interesting. Oh, I guess make this bigger. What's interesting is that the red also has psychological effects, just the color. So it symbolizes, it's very tiny, sorry. Red symbolizes action, strength, energy, and power. Some of the effects of the color is attention, motivation, stimulation, and caution. Some of the positives is sexuality, courage, disease, and confidence. The negative side is like aggression, danger, revenge, and anger. So the color of passion and energy. Red draws the attention like no other color. It radiates a strong and powerful energy that motivates us to take action. It is also linked to the sexual and stimulation of deep and intimate passion. Red is unanimously used to warn and sign caution for danger. Now, I have a color swatch here that shows the different variations of this red. Every single one of those hues of color has something different biologically with the body. So we know that we are hue man, right? Many colors of man. The hues of light are no different. So next one, we're going to talk about the sacral, or the color orange. The color orange brings optimism, has the ability to repair the respiratory system, it helps build the thyroid gland, depresses parathyroid, and relieves cramps and muscle spasm. So that is what it can be used in that chart of the body I showed earlier. That's what that specific light can do. And there's numbers on that body chart that kind of show you where to kind of put that light. Some of the symbolization of orange is emotion, youth, optimism, and then some of the effects is encouragement, uplifts, it stimulates, it helps you communicate. The positive aspects is spontaneity, creativity, warmth, positivity. Some of the negative, because everything has good and bad, are being superficial, impatient, or dominant. So when someone's very dominant, they are also acting within their sacral chakra as I feel power over others, versus having power over others, which would be the solar plexus. That is your energy system. That is your body. That is your power, your battery. Yellow is the brightest moments in life. It stimulates the motor system, the motor nervous system, which energizes muscles. It moves the lymphatic system. Every time, for some reason, when I think of the lymphatic system, I think of the color yellow. And it's funny because this color yellow actually stimulates the lymphatic system. So you can put it on your certain points of your lymphatic system and actually activate it to get it flowing, as well as manipulation of muscle tissue. So it stimulates the intestines, pancreas, and the production of bile. Bile, again, is a hue of yellow. It can expel worms and other microorganisms. That is very interesting. Some of the symbolization behind it is that it is happiness, optimism, positivity, intellect. The effects is clarity, inspires, amuses, and energizes. Some of the positive aspects, creativity, perception, mentality, and warmth. And then the negative aspects, which are our favorite, right? Cowardice, deception, egotism, and caution. And again, the many hues of the yellow, those different variations would do different things. The darker yellows are more stimulating, the lighter yellows are more sedative. Green. So when we think of green, we think of, right? I hope so. So it's a cerebral equilibrator, pituitary stimulant, rebuilds muscle tissue, destroys. It is plugged in, yeah. Destroys microorganisms. It's a bacteria. Oh, that's a good word. It's a bactericide and a disinfectant. So have you noticed that most of our cleaners are simple green? Green power, green man, green whatever. They're green colored because that shows the clean. You think of nature, you think of, that's pretty clean. It's healthy. It makes me feel good. Some of the symbology behind it is harmony, safety, growth, health, revitalizes, balances, relaxes, and encourages us. We have generosity, hope, prosperity, luck. The negative sides would be judgment, envy, materialism, and inexperience. That's what it says. Just going to let you know. Okay. But so if we go a little bit further back, if you think of the heart chakra, that's kind of what the doctrines are on that center. So it is our heart. It is green. We know that. But isn't it interesting that the colors themselves match with what the chakra, or the energy center of a hormone, actually is? So let's backtrack a little bit. The root chakra is a wheel. It's a mandala. But it's actually your adrenals. It is a hormone center in the body. It is your adrenals. That's your fight or flight response. If your adrenals are calm, you're in a peaceful mood. The sacral is different from men and women. Sacral for women is your uterus, is your creative expansion. That is the portal. That is the life bringer of this existence. And for men, it's our prostate. So you think how if one of these chakras are underproducing, you can have these issues like, ovary cancer or uterine cancer or prostate cancer for men. A lot of men aren't creative anymore, unfortunately. We're just in the work world. But there's so much exposure to all these chemicals and all these things that are hurting us that our most vital and most powerful centers are getting hurt. So then you go into the solar plexus, that's your intestines. I think we all know that. There's more dopamine produced in your intestines than anywhere else in serotonin, and than anywhere else in your body. So that's why it's called your battery, because serotonin is what gives us the ability to live. It gives us that joy, that peace. Your heart center, that is, everyone knows that. There's controversy on whether it's like a pump or a valve. I think it's kind of a mixture between the two. But it's got the largest wavelength of magnetism. You can actually get an electrocephalogram, and I can measure someone's heart from way back there in the crowd. You can measure the field of the electromagnetic energy, just as much as you can measure the field of a wavelength of the color green. So the color is harmony and health. Green is generous, relaxing color that revitalizes our body and mind. It balances our emotions and leaves us feeling safe and secure. It also gives us hope with promises of growth and prosperity. And it provides a little bit of luck and help along the way. So blue. This color is very powerful. I hope you all don't get agitated. It relieves itching and irritation. encourages perspiration, can be mildly sedative, improves fever and inflammation, and it's a pineal stimulant. What I think is interesting about this color and how mainstream science says this stuff doesn't work, well, why do you put premature babies under blue light to fight jaundice? But it's woo-woo. So some of the symbols behind it for words, security, trust, loyalty, responsible. It protects, it calms, it relaxes, it supports. The positive sides, confidence, peace, honesty, reliability. The negative would be too conservative, passive, depressed, and predictable. The blue is associated with the throat, and the throat is expression. And sometimes we can be very calming with our words, or sometimes we can piss people off. It's one of the most powerful influences in our centers of our body that we can give to other people. The other ones are kind of more internal. Your heart can express outwardly, your sacral can express sensually outwardly, but your throat, your voice, your thoughts behind your mind projected has the most influence. And that's why this color is very, very important. It's also deeply connected to our psychology that we'll get here in a little bit. The color blue is trust and loyalty. Blue has a calming and relaxing effect on our psyche. I just said that. Look at that. It's like I wrote it. That gives us peace of mind. It makes us feel confident and secure. It dislikes confrontation and too much attention. But it's honest, reliable, and responsible color that you can always count on for its support. Indigo, which is one of my favorite colors. Also known as purple, but purple's a little bit different because that's going to be a different spectrum. But that deals with integrity. It's a parathyroid builder. It causes contraction and controls abscesses. Promotes the production of phytocytes, which destroys, again, microorganisms. And it eases suffering and lessens overactivity. I don't know how many people have like a black light. That's not quite the same light, but if you have an incandescent that's purple, that is really good to have it very low and tuned down for the nighttime. Some of the symbology behind the words, it is structure, integrity, intuition. Yeah. It is, I'm sorry, this is so small. It inspires, it uplifts, and it invigorates. It is introspective. It is encouraging, insightful, and responsible. Some of the negative aspects that are actually on this page, but I'll just tell you, is when you're in the negative form of this light of this frequency, that's disillusionment. That can be where a lot of people that have like schizophrenia or mental conditions could really benefit from this color, but what they're stuck in is in the white color, and they're not able to release those thoughts in their mind. So disillusionment, dishonesty, fearful, and conjuring. So this is a very mystical color. The color of integrity and intuition. Indigo is knowledgeable, yet judgmental. Uplifting, yet bigoted. It is kind and dramatic. In essence, indigo's positive attributions are matched only by its negative traits. Thankfully, indigo possesses a level of beauty that no other color comes close to. And in fact, back in the ancient days, there was a certain sea creature, I think it was the horseshoe, the little crab-looking thing like in Florida. They used its blood to make the blue color, and they used other flowers to make purple, and it was so rare that only the wealthy people could wear it. And so that's why it built a certain amount of trust within people that the popes or the kings and queens, because this color is ingrained in our psyche, and we look for them for wisdom and guidance. But back in the day of like Atlantean times or even like ancient Egyptian times, you would see your mystical preachers and probably doctors wear this color. And then violet, which is just a little bit different but higher on the spectrum. Harmony of the mind. It's a spleen builder and stimulant. It decreases muscular activity. It's a lymphatic depressant, so if you have an overactive lymphatic system. Kidney and adrenal suppressant, decreases sensitivity to pain, which helps with sleep, and it's the shortest but most powerful wavelength. Some of the symbology behind that is spirituality, wisdom, creativity, sensuality. Some of the effects is it motivates, inspires, uplifts, and balances. The positive expressions is it's intuitive, creative, and considerate. And the negative would be fragile, raw, timid, and arrogant. So again, here's some different spectrums of the colors. You do get like a little bit of like a grayish tone on some of these purple ones, but they call it purple. Maybe I'm colorblind, but that's according to that swatch. So now let's migrate a little bit. So we knew about light. Let's get into sound. And sound is very incredible. So we had this quote from earlier that's the universe is a symphony of vibrating strings. What I think is interesting, though, is if anyone's had a sound bowl experience, they can get a specific frequency. It's usually like 432 hertz, which is balance, which is the green tone. And they can put it in a certain part of your body, extended from your body, which is in your field. And you can hear the sound hum normally, and then it gets denser when it's something. And you can feel it, and they break it apart. There's something that's existing in there that's an electromagnetic spectrum of your energy body that's attaching to your physical body. And you can hear the tone shift. It's almost as it's getting deadening, and that's what sound can do. So sound can map our etheric body. So, interesting thing about the musical scale, I myself am not a musician, but there's something called the chromatic scale. And it's music, but it's color. So it starts from C all the way to B, and that's a single octave. And the octave is 7 notes. And the funny thing about this is a C3. The C3 cycles at 130.8 hertz. Exactly double that, which is 261.6, is another octave of C. So we know that if one note on a certain octave is exactly double of the next octave, that means there's a pattern there. And it actually operates the same exact way of light. So sound, eventually at the highest spectrum, the higher you go in the sound, that actually produces light. That's how an incandescent bulb works. You have tungsten and a positive, negative, and it vibrates so fast that it creates heat. That heat creates light. So we can think of sound as the lower aspect of light. And we're going to watch a video real quick to show the geometries of how sound actually works. But here's the thing I didn't tell you. Remember those hues that were on those other slides? So there's actually 12 main colors in healing. We have red, red, orange, orange, yellow, yellow, green, 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 blue, 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 violet, violet, red, violet, or scarlet. So how many people here love crystals? You have all your crystals? It's because of the color. That's why you like those specific colors. Those specific colors are resonating with a certain part of your body. So if I take a blue-green, which is teal, how many people like teal? How many people have a lot of love in their heart that like the teal color? Pretty much everyone. Doesn't mean you don't have love if you don't like this color. But these different crystals excite different portions of our body. Some people like amethyst, like I love amethyst because I love purple. I love wisdom. I'm totally into esoteric knowledge. Duh. So you can look at all these different colors and find an affinity to them, but it's healing you, whether you know it or not. But the key to the healing is to understand what it's doing to you psychically. What are these colors representing? Where are they found in my body? How can I utilize them to heal? If you just go stand under light like Joe Schmo, it's not really going to do anything because you're not connecting what that frequency is doing to the frequency inside your body. The music scale also has 12 notes. It has half steps, just like the color spectrum. So if we have C, we have C sharp. If we have D, we have D flat. There's half step notes in between these musical spectrums as there are colors, which I think is absolutely fascinating. So that means that the red-orange is exactly the same tonation as a D flat or C sharp. And we're going to see a little bit about the geometries of sound.
What does geometry sound like? Well, music is geometry because the notes in music are arranged in perfect geometric patterns that are consistent across all keys. So let's look at each of these patterns to hear what they sound like. And the first geometric shape, this kind of starburst pattern, is formed by connecting every note in the chromatic scale with its complementary color, or what's called its tritone in music theory. So in the key of C, the C note, 1, is across from its polar opposite, G flat, interval flat 5. And just as these two colors clash, red and green, the two notes are also dissonant. And playing through all of the tritone pairs in the starburst, you get a similarly dissonant sound. That's the first geometric shape. The next is a 12-pointed star that connects each note with its respective subdominant and dominant, which are all closely related due to their proximity in the circle of fifths. But in the chromatic scale, all of these related notes are dispersed, hence the geometric star shape that forms to trace their connections, which all sound very pleasing. In the key of C, for example, the C note sounds consonant with F, interval 4, and G, interval 5. And together these notes form what's called a suspended 4 chord. By tracing the lines of this geometric shape, you can hear the same consonant symmetry across all keys. The next shape is formed by a group of triangles where each set is separated by intervals of major thirds and minor sixths. Like in the key of C, where C is evenly spaced with E, the major third, and A flat, the minor sixth. The three notes in this triangle create a kind of epic sound, and together they form what's called an augmented chord, with 4 of these triangles in total. The next shape is made up of perfect squares, where each square includes intervals of minor thirds and major sixths. Like in the key of C, where C is evenly spaced with E flat, the minor third, and A, the major sixth, which are also evenly spaced with C's tritone G flat, the flat 5 note. Together, these 4 notes have a sound that's somewhere between consonant and dissonant and form what's called a diminished 7th chord, where there are 3 of these squares in total. The chromatic scale also includes 2 hexagons of whole step intervals, where each set forms its own whole tone scale. In the key of C, these 6 notes combine to make a dissonant C9, flat 5, flat 6 chord. And finally, when you connect all 12 notes of the chromatic scale, a 12-sided dodecagon forms. These 6 shapes are the foundation of all patterns in music theory, which is really just audible geometry.
So, that's pretty cool. There's sacred geometry within the relationship of notes that are either half step, fifths, thirds, or sixths, which is the same exact thing with lights. The blending of different lights and the blending of different notes gives us harmony. So our hormone centers, or our chakras, are the harmony within our body. Harmonizing centers, hormones, that's where these words come from. So if we're harmonized within the color of our being, that our musical note is playing and flowing, we're in tune. And we know if we're in tune by the way we feel. Otherwise, we're striking a note and it sounds like doo-doo. So here's the visual representation of these notes in something called cymatics. So cymatic is using light and water to visualize the reverberations of these notes. And it's interesting, if you look in the top, the red color, the C1, that looks awfully a lot like the mandala of the root chakra. And it's a vibrational tone. And if you look over at A0, over there on the top left, that looks a lot like the third eye chakra for the mandala. And what's even crazier about that is you can't really see it from here, but just look it up. That is a pentagon in that shape which resembles Saturn. And Saturn is the governing body of that musical tone and that light spectrum and that system of the body. In alchemy, not in astrology. Alchemy and astrology, they kind of go hand in hand, but there's a different interpretation in alchemy. So we look at all these ones, and you look at like D, for example, that kind of looks like the sun. So these musical notes are emanations of these spheres, or the music of the spheres, in a bigger cosmic scale. The music is the smallest, the planetary bodies are the biggest, and we're in somewhere between. And it's a beautiful symphony. Like Tesla said, we are an orchestra put together. So now I kind of want to go into a little bit of the Solfeggio frequencies. Those are a combination of tones. Now, me personally, they sound better when it's used with a tuned sound fork or like a bowl versus like a tone that just beeps at you the whole time. I do find that a little edgy. Because when you listen to those tones where it's a Solfeggio frequency and it's kind of just like that annoying ee, that is a stereo signal. We want analog. We are analog beings, we're not digital beings, so we need analog. So all these MP3s, all these digital sounds, they're not actually doing us any good. You want analog. whether it's an actual instrument, a tuning fork, a bell, whatever it is, it's got to be a real, true vibration. And then we understand that at the lowest, we have the 369 or 396. It's red, it stimulates that same spectrum of light, that same musical note, and that same hormone center or root chakra. And it goes all the way up the scale. So you can actually do quick meditations with these. There is a lot of people with sound bowls on YouTube that you can do these. These are frequencies of combinations of sounds that break up stagnant energy within our field. There's an esoteric understanding that everything that is wrong with your body has existed as energy first. So whatever the faculties of your mind are, manifest as an internal discomfort or dis-ease. So we can actually reverse that process by tuning the etheric field through sound or light to reverse the processes in the body. And that's why science doesn't want to actually make this known. It's because they don't want you to use the faculty of your mind to heal your body. And it's done with the assistance of these tools that are free. Music is free and light is free. And it's really not hard to make the device that Dinshaw used. You just have to use the spiritual practice and the understanding of what your hormones are doing and the association to that light or that tone if you choose to use music. So now I'm going to get into a little bit of alchemy and how this ties the smallest micro to the biggest macro. So alchemy is the art what separates what is useful from what is not by transforming it into the ultimate matter and essence. This is from an alchemist back in the early 1500s named Paracelsus. Alchemy gives us the ability to transmit the material into the spiritual. It allows us to use the material as a metaphor for mental and spiritual applications. The funny thing about alchemy, like I said earlier, it's the micro and the macro in a process of utilizing a metal in the logical sense of the masculine mind and relating it to emotions. How to take that metal from one substance to the other by slowly burning away what is no longer necessary. It's a process in which a base metal relates to a specific emotion and how to transcend it. So here we have an old image of Mundus Elementaris. It's a perfect representation of the 7 metals, the 7 heavenly bodies, and the 7 main organ systems, which are those hormones or those chakras that I talked about earlier. They're all the same ideas, all throughout the world, explained in a different way. This is the one that I resonate the most with because I have a logically based mind, but it allows you to tap into the emotion of where that logic makes sense. So the 7 celestial bodies are listed within the concentric rings from the top left of the diagram. Alchemy emerged at the time when people believed that the sun and all the planets revolved around the earth. I'm not going to get into that debate, but that's what they said. These 7 were the only visible ones to the naked eye. In the order of heavenly bodies, the diagram is most distant from the earth to the closest. Mundus Elementaris refers to the elementary world of the realm. In alchemy and ancient philosophy, it represents the concept of the universe being composed of fundamental elements such as earth, water, air, and fire. These elements were believed to be the basis of all material existence and were often associated with specific qualities and properties. The study of Mundus Elementaris was fundamental to understanding the nature of matter and the workings of cosmology in many ancient philosophical and mystical traditions. So here we have the planet Saturn, and there is a lot of confusion on which hormone center, which musical note that it corresponds to. This is where I could say use your own discernment and kind of like do your own research if you're interested in it, but there's a reason why it's called the music of the spheres. So I'm going to give you my version of what I think is there. Doesn't mean it's true, okay? It's just, this is what makes sense to me in my background. So Saturn represents the personification of what? Our ego. In order to free the soul, this planetary energy and metal must be purified. It's the lowest, the most densest, and the most toxic in terms of alchemy. So the metal that it's represented is lead. Lead represents something called the prima materia, or the primal materia. It is the first base matter that teaches us about putrefaction, decay, limitations, protections, and self-control. Saturn is a dark blue feminine planet, also referred to the planet of karma. Saturn symbolizes as the human being who has learned all his hard lessons from earthly life, and is eager to join the mystery planets of the world, that is Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, which are invisible to the naked eye. So that would be that other octave. So this is a planet that is in its last evolutionary stage trying to ascend. which is what we could say we're doing here, and why we see the similar things in the darkness as related to Saturn and their Saturn cults. It's about that journey to transcend that darkest planet. The third eye chakra is our main portal to step beyond duality. It is the energy of the sixth chakra. It invites us to transcend our limitations and restrictions imposed by the planet Saturn. Lead is the first metal to be studied in alchemy because it is the base of all, and therefore it is the most difficult. We deal consequently with all those motives, thoughts, feelings, and experiences that are brought into life and promoted by this most malefic planet. A majority of diseases, sorrows, losses, obstacles, restrictions, poverty, and disappointments in the world are due to the influence of Saturn. Not blaming him, but that's the sphere that represents that mode or path, so to speak. The positives of this influence are the ability to gain in life, the result of painful planning and plotting through perseverance, intelligent supremacy, through the reflection of careful thought of our actions and how they impact the whole. Transcending this emotion, this light, this musical note, and all associated vibrations of Saturn, and this metal will give you the key to the cosmic mind. So if you take the archetype of Saturn and you apply it to your life, the color, the spectrum, the musical note, the chakra, you'll get a better understanding of what it's here to teach you and how you can use it. So now we have Mars. So it's not really going in line. It's just kind of like how I did it, how it resonated with me. So Mars is passion. I'm backwards. Oof. Sorry. We are with Jupiter. Hi. Big old naked man. Okay. So without Jupiter, life of man would be stern and severe. It would be little inclination to assist others, little thought for anything other than self. This is why the planet represents the crown, the universal whole. Tin is the metal that corresponds with human life for such pure and noble moral sentiments. The true nobility and impulse itself is incorruptible, but can quickly bend in malleability to assist the charity of others. What's interesting about this planet and this time frame, anyone who is a Sagittarius, it's always joyful the moments before Christmas. Everyone's in the holiday spirit, but as soon as Christmas comes, that damn Saturn. And all the holiday people are there. Sometimes we don't get along with our family members, and the mood kind of goes more serious. That's the difference of these shifts of these planets and the energies around us and what they represent. So there would be no religion and no charitable institutions, no parental kindness and no mercy. It is thought in life is to let live, or it is thought in life is to let live and let live, is the expression. Maybe I think I live and let live. Yeah, that one. I typed it wrong. It aspires to extend the helping hand of all mankind and lift them up through sheer nobility and purpose. Tin is proof against acids of envy and remorse, but cannot withstand the heat of dissipation, meaning pressure. It is a wonderful and virtuous metal, but the true virtue of misapplied becomes a vice, or true virtue being misapplied becomes a vice. It is a less difficult thing to give than to know when to give wisely. That is Christmas in a nutshell. I think we all know that it's a marketing scheme and everybody gets presents. You got the little kids that want the tab, whatever. It's the greatest of others to persist in idleness is unwise giving in the great. Basically what that means is if we are joyful in our own expression, but we're not trying to share that with others, that is not the true expression of this energy. The true expression is to be jolly and to give, but not necessarily give in material items. We must have spiritual discernment to foresee the result of our action towards another before we extend a helping hand. One must know the assistance of the soul and what it needs to support the immortal part of man first, rather than the material means to accomplish a supposed spiritual purpose. I know there was a time in my life when I was homeless. This was after I left the intelligence world, and I kind of was like shunned from my community. And so I was homeless for about almost a year. And I'd call my grandma, and I was like, hey, can I help a buddy with my cell phone? And she goes, no, you need to figure it out. And this is an example of what Jupiter is. Don't give a person a material possession because they need it. Help them along their journey for spiritual growth so they never get back in that situation in the first place. And that's, I think, what we forget the meaning of Christmas is. It's to help those in need, but not with things. With advice, with insights, with expansion of consciousness. And that is why it represents the crown chakra. So through the purification of this metal and this planet, the crown chakra, the violet ray, and the musical note of B, we must transcend the limitations of our being. Our neighbor is thyself, different but degree of expression only. Despite different beliefs, material possessions, and status, no one is above the other. Just as an individual in a symphony on the grand scale of the cosmic orchestra, each playing a role divinely guided in a beautiful expansion of consciousness as a whole. No chord left unplayed, no instrument without its use, just one expression of cosmic strings tethered together with infinite possibilities. We all are creating the symphony by being here, and we all have to be here to play our part. Mars. So, we talked about Mars a little bit with the root chakra. I think we're almost running out of time. Oh no. So, let me just adjust the screen here. So we know Mars as the planet of war. That's the picture of the planet of war. Mars is about passion, our deepest desire to influence and create attitudes towards action. Think of Mars as the doing energy. Its metal is iron. It's all about abundance, the ability to attract what is desired and take it if it's not. This metal has its faults in overabundance or taking things through force, and that's what kind of war is. Iron or Mars is a minor malefic planet, giving man energy, courage, resistance, aggressiveness, and forcefulness. It must not be used merely as a weapon of physical defense, but to destroy the thoughts that menace the soul, which is primarily fear. So we use this energy to give us courage to fight our demons. And that's why it's related to the root chakra. It's our foundation. Humans, they always talk about like we came from cavemen and we had to fight all the time. We have this nervous system that gets activated for no reason, but it's actually not like that. We have these planetary bodies that are asking us on a micro version to teach them about themselves. That's what this is. We are individual aspects of a screenshot of what they are, played in our own story by influences of their cosmic song. It must be used to tear down the belief of social conditions that threaten the spiritual life of society. It must be turned against legions of darkness that infest the lower astral realms. Both lead and tin are soft metals, yielding readily to pressure from the outside. Iron, however, is hard and a severe metal capable of great resistance. When you heat up iron and you bend it, it usually goes back to its normal shape. So that's why iron and Mars is resistant to change. And a lot of the times when you have an overactive root chakra or your adrenals, you won't change because you're not in a relaxed state chemically and psychologically. Mercury, also known as, what's that? Venus. Oh, what is going on with my thing, man? I love copper. Venus, I knew it. Represents love, compassion, and takes what it takes to become a well-rounded individual. That's the heart chakra. She's got the burning apple. Apples are very famous in those drawings for some reason. Copper has a cleansing effect on the body and acts as a messenger from the body to the soul. Every single cell in your body actually has copper in it, which has melatonin, which produces light. And you'll know if a person is sick through spectrum analysis if they're not producing enough light, because the electrical continuity in their cells and that melatonin, it's not bright enough. It's pretty fascinating how light is literally the best diagnosis. Light and sound. Sound can diagnose a lot too. So Venus is a minor benefic, furnishing a man with compassion, affection, refinement, and love of the artistic and beautiful. It lends a pleasing aspect to every metal, and society exerts itself to bring people together in harmony. This is the metal of love, but when out of balance, this metal turns green, filled with jealousy and selfishness that corrupts everything it touches. So that is a pure copper on the top. That is a tarnished copper. So symbolically, what that means is when copper turns green, it has a positive ionization. So if you look at the great Statue of Liberty, that was copper once upon a time. But the salt in the atmosphere creates positive ions that attach electrically to that copper and tarnishes it. And in alchemy, that's called a lower expression of copper. And that's kind of why they made it that metal, because Venus, the Venus star, has that kind of color when you look at it in the morning. It's kind of this greeny copper, and they associated copper with Venus because of its ability to shine, like the three beautiful precious metals, which is copper, silver, and gold. Polished copper, to me, is absolutely gorgeous. But when it does get corrupted, it becomes quite ugly. And it literally gets on everything, and it gets all over you, and it's kind of hard to get off of things. So now we're at Mercury. So Mercury or Thoth or Hermes, it's all the same being, 3 different places in the world. So Thoth would be Egyptian, Hermes I think is Greek, and Mercury I think is Roman. I might have that backwards. I think I have dyslexia today. So Mercury is the planet of the mind, and more specifically, the way we arrange our thoughts with our words. Our perceptions are as diverse as beads of quicksilver. That is the metal for Mercury, which when brought together in a single but shining concept, they're good for a moment, but then they can kind of separate and kind of go all over the place and make distractions and kind of it can be a mess. And that's our thoughts. They're fleeting. They go anywhere and they can mold to any container. It is the most unstable of metals. Similarly, so are our thoughts. Quickly accelerated by the fires of enthusiasm, our thoughts spew out of our mouths as soon as we think of them. In some cases, not everybody. Mercury has the wonderful power to reflect light. It is used in coding for mirrors. Likewise, the mind has the power of reflection, mirroring our ideas and concepts to the worlds around us. So this is really the moment where we're taking that metal, reflecting our inner thoughts, and projecting them forward. And that's why I associated the throat chakra with that. Because you have to use your mind to speak. You can't just, you have to have something going on in there. But if we don't take the time to reflect what's going on in here, sometimes it doesn't come out as poetic as it should. The moon. So this picture is actually of Hermes, the sun and the moon. But we're just going to focus on the moon for this one. So the moon is a feminine symbol, universally represented by the rhythm of time. It embodies the cycle of not only the oceans, but the cycle of the moon. And we got to hurry up pretty quick because I hear them coming. 15. Okay. We're good. I got 2 slides left, so we're almost done. So the moon is that nocturnal, unconscious side of ourselves. So I chose for this one sacral chakra. A lot of people are saying the heart, and I was like, that doesn't really make sense because silver doesn't resonate with the heart. Silver is more of a sensual metal. It's introspection. It's the unconscious. It's the ability to create in life is what the moon. So the alchemist, the moon symbol is for inner wisdom, contemplation, and transition. This energy can be used as a tool to understand one's own intuition and better adapt to the new life they have created for themselves. So it is through the light of the moon reflected from the sun that one is able to find the answers of deep mysteries of life and become one with his or her own immortal soul. The moon or silver reminds us that growth is subtle and our true power is revealed when we learn the appreciations of the mysteries and the beauty of life. A lot of times when we're going through stress, especially for me, I always yell at the stars. I'm like, gosh, because I don't think of like a man in a chair with a beard, because that's going to be me in the future. But the moon is a reflection of the sun. So what does that mean? The sun is the active component, is the masculine component in this sphere that we live in. And in a partnership, a male can reflect on a woman and a woman can shine back. And that's how you have a supportive partnership, is when one is giving, one is receiving, one is receiving, one is giving. And that's kind of the relationship between the sun and the moon. So when you look at the moon and you look at silver, the moon's glory is actually interesting. Did you know the shadow of a moon is hotter than direct moonlight? How does that make sense? How is a shadow hotter, more temperature than direct light? So that means that the moon is receiving whatever it's reflecting from the sun, but then producing its own version of its own light. And it gives us the mysteries of the depths of our unconscious. That is what it's for. And that is the true power of the feminine energy. So now we're getting into the sun. The sun is the central governing force. It is a source of both power, physical and spiritual. Gold is the color for this one. It is a spiritual fire that lights man. It is thought that the sun and gold that is able to unlock divine creativity, uniting him or her with the soul of God. Because the qualities of God are flexible, brilliant. They do not tarnish. It is pure. The alchemist learns to use the fire of his soul to purify him or herself to becoming a perfect vessel for the divine will of God. Once the alchemist has learned to use the courage, strength, and authority given by the sun, or gold, they will overcome all trauma and imperfection and will gain full control over themselves and the world around them. That was a lot of information about the planets. But the key is if you take your chakras, your metals, a color of light, or a sound, and you go through whatever process that works for you, emotionally, mentally, and physically, you can heal yourself. You have to just transcend these different stages, and the way we get there is by contemplating, feeling, and going through whatever version of how you want to get there. You can do the alchemical way, you can do the spiritual way, the musical way, or through light. You can visualize the purple light. Just understand that the purple light is attaching to a hormone center. So that way you can kickstart your pituitary. Or if you have work on being safety and you need security, work on your adrenals. So the chakras are metaphysical concepts for physical constructs in our body. And the other supporting factors are what facilitate change. Not one is better than the other, but all are a path to get there. And it's just up to you to choose which way you like. Do you like the heavy philosophical thing like me, alchemy? Or do you like the more subtleties of music? Or maybe the visualization of colors? Either way, if it's a metal, a color, of a music tone, it relates to an organ in a body and a specific traumatic event or emotion that you've experienced. And that is how you heal the body. And that's it. Oh, thank you.